My name's John Coffer, and this is Camp Tintype. This is my home, but it's also where we have what's called the Jamboree, the Wet Plate Collodion Jamboree, once a year. And we're just wrapping the one up right now, which is the 21st Jamboree. It's been going on that long. But I've been doing wet plate collodion photography since 1982, and settled here in 1985 after being on the road as a horse-drawn traveling photographer for 7 years. Same horse pulling the wagon, old Brownie. And we have here at Camp Tintype now a thing we call the Photographic Museum, where the wagon is being preserved for posterity at the moment. And it is a historic artifact. It's the last horse-drawn traveling photographer's wagon, and well worth preserving. It's been through 36 different states and one foreign country. The foreign country was Texas, which was a big stretch to go through in the wagon at 2 miles an hour. Anyway, what else do you need to know?
How did the Jamboree get started?
The Jamboree got started in 2002. I've been teaching classes here, Wet Plate Collodion photography classes, and just talking with my students. I decided that we should have a little get-together in the middle of the summer. So that's, we had maybe 7 or 8 people show up and had a great time and decided something to do again and again. And each year has gotten, seems to be getting more popular and better attended. And we've had as many as 65 here at a Jamboree. And a few years back we had that many. But everybody, it's for free, and everybody has a great time sharing information with each other, shooting plates, and just general camaraderie and learning experience.
Wagon travels in the museum here. I was here, I guess. Okay. So yeah, I just built this in the last year or so. This is all from my own woods. I have a sawmill. There's dead trees in the woods, and sawed in the sawmill. Made my shed here for my wrapping bed. That piece there actually is rather significant. That's American chestnut, which I have, I have a fair amount of it dead in the woods. So, unfortunately, life killed off the chestnut. It's sort of a piece of American history in a way.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
So,
all the trim of my house in South Lima is American chestnut.
yeah.
Now it's extinct.
Yeah. So anyway, the photographic bandwagon, I felt it needed to be preserved because I feel it's a historic, item that needs to be preserved. So, and it was the last horse-drawn traveling photographer's wagon in existence, and it's starting to deteriorate, just sitting around here and such. So I decided to build a one for it and hopefully save it from that. But this is it was an Amish spring wagon that I got in Lancaster County back in 1978, and I modified it somewhat. I put this front step on it, and I built the top on it. The top just sets on it. There's 3 pins in the side, and I can take the top off if I like. But it's just made out of painted canvas. That's just regular plain old cotton canvas. It's got about 10 coats of paint on it. And then it's piece of canvas here, front and back, and such. And allows me to turn the back end into a darkness. where I was set up my camp. I use that for my girlfriend. It has a red glass window on the ceiling. It also acts as a somewhat of an air vent too. And get white, get a little circulation if I want it. But yeah, I would have to come up from the wagon inside the back end the six type of plates and develop signing a little school and we're having a boarding class with the we'll put parents on there. Yeah, but yeah, when I would travel when I make camp, I take the trunk out, the boxes out, and I always slept in the wagon. But anyway, yeah, it was just an idea that came upon me, during the bicentennial year, and that there was a lot of, the bicentennial wagon train, and there was lots of people doing historic crafts and such, rediscovering different things in the past, and I was coming back from some war reenactment that I've been doing dry plate pinstripes at, or just one of the reenactors actually at that event said, "You know how to come to the events on a horse and wagon?" I thought, "Yeah, I that's pretty far back." But on my way home, I realized, yeah, I could get rid of this car and just go around the country.
Because you only live once in life.
Yeah. So anyway, I was living in Orlando, Florida, and I actually had a little tintype gallery studio in the French Market on downtown Orlando and such. Make them aluminum dry plate tintypes and had the costings and so on. But it was boring as hell, got to be. And I decided that it was time to get that wagon and go out and have an adventure and nickel or travel tintype without it. But yeah, I started off with, my interest in the history of photography from just a little kid when I'm family pictures, looking at them going, wow, I wonder how these are made, and then I became a professional photographer in my late teens and early 20s and such, and local studios down in Florida, and that could be boring, and I said, no, I'm gonna decide on learning how these old processes are made and make that my thing and my little.
When you were a professional photographer, what kind of photographs did you take?
Yeah. Well, your standard senior pictures and
Yearbook?
Yeah, all kinds of weddings, different things. Yeah.
Little Bondo.
Huh?
Little Bondo in the zits?
Yes, did that. Yeah, this was before digital. This was film. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, it was a whole different world back then. But I went to the Smithsonian in '76 and saw their great exhibit. They have an history of photography, but it was right there. When I talked to the head curator, and I said, I want to learn how to do Wet Plate Collodion tintypes. And he said, if you find somebody who knows how to do it, you come tell us. And so I saw that as, a green light. To me, it wasn't a red light, it was a green light. Wow, this is a lost art. I could be on the ground floor of a lost art, and I figured if I could get my hands on enough old manuals and such, I could figure this thing out. And that's basically how it went. There was nobody taught me how to do what. I had to filter it out in books and stuff, and there's trial and error and learn as you go. But anyway, it was sort of, things overlap, and like I said, I had a studio in Florida there that was doing aluminum plates and dry glass plates and such. And when I decided I wanted to go on the wagon, and I sold out my stuff in Florida, sold the car, all that, the remaining stuff in the storage unit, and went to Lancaster County. The Amish helped me, get the wagon together. I built the top and that, and they helped me find Brownie the horse, which was pivotal. Without Brownie, nothing would have happened, of course. And from there, I started.
Wait a minute. Was there a horse before Brownie?
Well, there's no horse. Well, there was, but I tested a couple horses there in Lancaster before I got there.
What happened? How did you get Brownie?
Well, I had a horse that I was trying out, and and he was just too spirited and lively. He was, skittish and so on. And he was fast. You could ride him. Oh my! I used to ride him a time type. It was fun riding, but it was scary on the road. So anyway, but one of the Amish thought they liked that fast spirited horse, so I went to his farm and my friend was saying, he's got a horse I think will work just fine for you. And I went to this Amish guy's farm. I rode this, saddlebred horse down there, and they said, well, this is a horse, and I want to trade you. And it was just a plow horse, a heavy plow horse, mixed breed, whatever. And I was like, And my Amish friend said, no, that's what you need. You need strong, reliable, steady as you go horse. And so I said, okay. And we handshake deal, traded, and I put the saddle on Brownie and headed back to my other Amish friend's place. And Brownie just was doing like slow molasses right there. And I was like, did I do the right thing? But anyway, it turned out Brownie was perfect. And he could trot if you wanted to and stuff. But anyway, yeah. And then I headed out. This is Neighborport, Pennsylvania. There in Lancaster County, and I decided I had to go south. And if I made it to Florida by Christmas, then I would decide what to do after that. If I wanted to keep on doing horse-drawn traveling photographer life, or do something else, But I got to Florida and I was like, this is great. This is working out fine. Of course, I had to learn a lot of crafts as I went along to keep this thing going over the years. I was on the road 7 years. And so I had to, sure how to read the wagon wheels. I had to shoe my horse. Eventually, I had oxen. I had to figure out how to make ox shears and shoe oxen. So there's so many crafts that I had to get my head around to keep my whole thing going.
John, how many times did you change the tires on this vehicle?
At least 2 times. Yeah, because it wears off. The steel wears off in your road.
What year did you begin this journey?
78. And then settled here in 85. And that, but it wasn't, you used the word journey. It wasn't exactly a journey. And that I wasn't going on a trip from point A to point B. That was my life. This was my home. Where the wagon was home. And if I wanted to stay a few days somewhere, I would. Somebody's oftentimes that would happen. Somebody'd say, yeah, we got a big pasture there. If you want to just hang out for a while and rest up, you go where your son, things like that, where I wasn't like on some schedule to want the licensing a wagon train would be, 20 miles a day or all this stuff. I averaged maybe 15 miles. But anyway, it was
Cheap gas.
Cheap living, but it was sort of like a born again experience thing, and that I've traveled the country in an automobile. I used to go to reenactments. I had a Ford Econoline van to go and set up and drive the tintypes and so on that, and that got too expensive. But I'm not going to do this anymore. But anyway, I quickly found out that I didn't see anything or not experience anything going in a car, and I hitchhiked across the country a couple of times in my teens and stuff. Of course, flown and planes and everything else, but when I got in the wagon, it was like a born again thing. It was like, everything was new. It was like, everything was amplified. The smells, the sounds, everything was amplified going at 2 miles an hour down the road. You were sort of like a temporary resident wherever you go. I could only on 2 miles an hour. And everybody stopped a lot. A lot of people stopped to talk, and you learn, the history about that little corner of the world or whatever. And, it was just everything was just, it's summer, like I said, magnified like a small child when they're first start infant. Everything's new and everything is big and magnified. You know, that's the feeling I had on the road. And I could remember for at least the first 2 years, I could remember what I did every day for 2 years. Yeah, that's how and distinct that each day was. You know, and more. I can do that here. No, and anytime, any other part of my life, I can remember 2 years every day that I did. I kept a journal though, but still, you know, it was just that intense, and you know, our way of life. But you know, it was a mixture of you know, times that were very good, and there was times that were really miserable. You know, I can't say that it wasn't all bed of roses. You know, I got near killed so many times. You know, it's like an unbelievable luck that I survived it. Because there was just so many times I was this close from getting killed. You know, I felt like I didn't need to go to Vietnam. It was like a war. You know, the bullets were going by me every day. You know, the semi-tractor trailer and stuff. You know, and so and all kinds of close calls, and then actually in Alabama, a truck driver tried to kill me with his truck, but I managed to get out of the way just in the hair's breadth. You know, because I was throwing him up the full truck ladder. I had to pull, and I got up on the side road and got out of that area. But anyway, yeah. But people were generally really, really nice. You know, they were local, they're people. They were very, very often extraordinarily nice, treated you just like you would family. And help, authentic. You know, it was amazing how trusting we could be, how much generous they would be. You know, many people along the way. And I called it wagon magic, you know, because if I had pulled into their yard in a motorhome and said, "Oh, I'm traveling around with a motorhome, can I stay in your backyard?" I said, "Get out of here, you're the camper," whatever. And the wagon, it was like, "Sure," and they come on in and have supper with us, tell us about your travel. And the world hadn't really changed really that much in 100 years from the last horse-drawn traveling photographers, because there was, you know, nowadays it's completely different. You know, back when I was on the road, there was no cell phones, there was no computers, no internet. You know, you traveled using maps. That's what I did. I would get the best maps I could find as I went. You know, I'd ask people, "Oh, where could I get a county map?" And then eventually I got U.S. Geological Survey maps and that. And I would just constantly be studying the maps, trying to find a way around, you know, the busy roads and so on. You know, many times sometimes they would say, "No, you got to go right through the middle of Fredericksburg to go south." And I'd say, "There's got to be a way around it." "Oh, no, there isn't." And I'd study my maps very thoroughly. "Yep, there's this little dirt road that goes off here and another little dirt road that goes that way." And I was very, you know, and that, because I was constantly outflanking the enemy. That was the traffic. But anyway, it was, like I said, 7 years. It wasn't, you know, just me and Brownie. Things expanded as they went. If you look at my display here, you know, for a couple of years, it's just, that, me and Brownie. And but then I teamed up with a woman out in California, and she had a dog. So then at that point, the two of us and the dog, and then we got to Oregon, and they gave a guy that had a wild horse adoption center, said, "You should have a wild horse too." So we adopted a wild horse and trailered that behind the photographic cricket that I used to ride, and we made him a pack horse and stuff. He was a really nice guy. Shoot him on, he just was great. Like, he'd never been ridden or shot before, but he did. I did the great little guy. Anyway, and then as I was heading east with that setup, the pack horse, the dog, the wife, and the wagon, we got to Iowa, and I decided that we need to expand more, so I got an old farm wagon and built it into what I call the camp wagon. You can see it in the picture here. And it had a wood stove in it and such. It was an old 1880s farm wagon, and I built the top part, same idea, painted canvas there. And there at the Living History Farm, and we camped in it for the winter. I raised a team of oxen, for an oxen, which I'd never worked oxen before, but that don't stop me.
Sure.
Like I'd do anything. I'd give it a try, So, raised a team of oxen on the second wagon. So by the time we headed out of the Des Moines area or the Living History Farm, I had 2 wagons, ox team, a dog, a pack horse, and brownie. And as we came east, heading east, we camped for the winter at a place called Hale Farm between Akron and Tidwell, Ohio. Living History is a farm place. And that's where I acquired Daisy, the milk cow. And that's her stall right there.
This is how.
And she's the grand dame of all these cows. They're all related to me. But anyway, that's a long, kind of a long story. But the story of Daisy should be a Walt Disney movie. If you go on my website,
Absolutely.
and you see on the reasons Camp Tintype is the place to come, and it says we have oxen, so you can see lots of. You click on the one how I came to buy oxen, and it has the story of Paul Devon's from heaven. It's like David.
Yeah, it's a great story.
Yeah, and anyway, so at that point we had the milk cow, and also at that same farm we adopted a hen, a buffalo victim hen, which they had given up for dead. When they go to Jersey actually. And the hen, she was a super fat old gal. You come in a little cage for a wagon. She came over. So we had an egg every other day, fresh milk, and all these animals. The dog, of course, ran all up the rig out of it. Here she didn't like ride the wagon. She always had to get out front right there. Anyway, so yeah, that's the outfit there as I rolled into New York State. And then I settled here in 85. I was just opening Russian land. The reason I chose this area was because there's Amish and Mennonites in the area. Plus it was about the cheapest land I could find in the country. Believe it or not. Yeah, now it's pricey because it's gotten popular around here. Yeah, but back then you could buy anything you want up to about $250 an acre. So I could afford 50 acres. But yeah, it wasn't just making money with portraiture, which I did. We also published our own books. This was the first book. Works as a little secret we put together in Oregon when we were running over near Brownsville, Oregon. And we met some people at an old newspaper shop there. Can you want to use your equipment? Yeah. But we put together the first book, More Search of My Seat. Because people were often asking me, "You're going to write a book someday?" And I said, "Hey, if I have a book, I could sell books." I said, "Oh." And so when they'd ask me that, I'd say, "Yeah, right here." But sold out of those pretty quick. And then we had another one called the Photographic Dan album. And up in those sold out, and we did Orchard and the book 1 and 2, and many of those sold. So yeah, it was sort of a, not all one thing as far as income. But I never worked any jobs like, really? No. it was, either photography or selling drugs. Was that, and then of course I didn't have any grants or rich cousins funding me or anything like that. It was just whatever I could get in the loan. So I went. I could live on about $2,000 a year, and then I get take with it. I figure about 11,000 miles, all right, totals out. And Ronnie lived to be 35 years old. And they just died of old age here. I used them a lot here too after I settled down and then went off to events and such. And then I got out of course the full photographic exam. I went to different, Mission Civil War events, work and there.
What about brownie and firecrackers?
Like the Hopper butterfly?
No, brownie and firecrackers. Kids with firecrackers.
Oh.
Tell us that story.
Well, yeah, okay. Wise guys sometimes would throw firecrackers out the window at the horse when going down the road. And
What would brownie do?
he didn't like it. But I didn't lose control of it. Yeah, people would do mischievous things like that. Honk their horn or skid on their brakes by you and stuff, and then just burn rubber past you and all that stuff. And that, the brownie would just go on. So it was a real big disappointment for some
Yeah, you just yell on.
Yeah, right. And and anyway, any questions?
But outside of Civil War events, fairs, other like
Oh,
get-togethers,
wherever. Because I was only 2 miles an hour, I couldn't just up and go to some event, 100 miles here or 200 miles there. And oftentimes people would say, you should have been here last month. We had a really great, fair here or something. And that's I can't be in one place at one time and 2 miles an hour. So occasionally I get lucky and I come on, hear about a reenactment or something and take it in and do some business that way. But a great deal of the time it was just, I would just pull in to a little town and park on a vacant lot by the grocery store or something and put my sign up, my shingle out. There it is. And often, of course, every little paper, back then, every little town had a newspaper. Now they don't, but back in 78 and 80, before the world changed, there was little small town papers and such, so then throw it on there. I'd be careful for 3 days and do portraits.
Yeah.
They were just local folks. But I had to have a few costumes, which or else they wouldn't get a picture made. I could tell them all day long, this is the original process or whatever. They'd be like, oh, my brother had that done at Six Flags over Jordan. He had a brown coat Polaroid. Oh no, they dressed up in their old clothes. I said, that's all they did. This is not the same, And it wasn't until I started getting into New York State, actually, the tail end of things, that I started getting customers that said, no, we don't want any costumes. We like the idea that you're doing the exact original process. I was like, hallelujah, I'm finally starting to crest the hill. And then I camped at Tennessee Country Museum and they had a reenactment there. And then I got word that Eastman House and the whole staff of Eastman's house came down. I did a really great group picture of them together. And, so they appreciated it for the fact that it was the real deal. They said I could walk. I was their wet plate guy for many years, actually, at the Eastman House. But I mean, in the archives, I could go wherever I wanted, like an employee. But anyway, it was just, you know, you never knew. I mean, I was in Wyoming. I just been coming out of Jackson Hole, which was another story. The long story that wow, but and there was this Roadhouse bar just out in the middle of nowhere, and I going by it, and these two drunks come out, stagger out of there, and I'm, hey, what are you doing? You take pictures, and I'm like, oh shit, oh sorry, and then I saw it, and they said there was a whole bunch of us camped behind the bar. You know, we're oil prospectors. We're here to, you know, do what do they do to check for oil in the ground and such. And we're all bored out of our minds. And you could do a great business. Come on, you know. And I said, yeah. So I went back there, and they had a fabulous business of doing all these guys that were camped in their campers and everything, and gals and so on. But you know, I sort of, you know, in a way, it was almost like 100 years before. If instead of oil prospectors, 100 years before might have been gold prospectors. You know, camped behind a bar somewhere. You know, out nowhere. So, yeah, some things are just hadn't really changed. I mean, and especially in the South and such, there was all kinds of little country general stores that have all gone defunct because of Walmart. And, you know, I can't buy them and offer these portraits, you know, the local folks, you know, and such. But yeah, you never know. Well, where the catch care. And then, of course, the books were, you know, just along the way, you know, people sometimes you practically have to have a cop to get the traffic around, but all these people could be stopping and going, "We want a book." You heading out?
Yeah.
All righty. Thanks for coming. Thanks.
The world's changed an awful lot. And do you think you could do it again this day and age?
Oh yeah,
I mean,
sure.
Would you take different routes? Would you? How would you change it if you were to start out now?
Well, I wouldn't have to change a whole lot.
You have to say goodbye to Anna, Antoine.
Right.
Would you put up with it too?
I have too many obligations.
That's good enough.
I mean, that's a very hypothetical question.
Yeah, but I mean,
no, it could certainly be done today. Yeah. But, you know, I'm sure anybody else doing it today wouldn't do it like I did as far as, you know, just studying maps and no smartphones. So, you know, I was trying to live, when I was on the road, I was trying to live as much as a person from the 19th century could, you know. It wasn't just, you know, old photography. I was baking my bread on campfires with the Dutch oven there and such, and still kerosene lamps for lights, and I would shave with a straight razor. I didn't, you know, for the first couple of years I didn't have a beard. I'd shave with a straight razor, and that's a craft in itself. You know, all kinds. You know, my journal with the dip pen. So, you know, I wanted to find out and learn how everything was done before modern technology, and decide what I wanted to later in life, what I was going to keep on with, and that. So anyway, yeah, but I had to learn things as they went, figure stuff out. Like, you know, people ask me, well, how did you feed your horse? I said, it just grows all over the place. You know? And,
Free gas.
yeah, so I'd stake them out. See, I built these chains, and they created a system where took a while to figure this out, you know, found the pin in the ground, and then the reason this is like old belting strap is because that's what would be around his legs, and he wouldn't hurt himself. And nobody get wrapped up on it. You know, hit the halter. There you go. You can be staked out into the grass. Like the wind. You never need to pull the stake out. the vibrator. This is used to pull the pin out of the ground, so I can rack my back and get that out of the ground. But, you know, they improvised. There was just like people in the old times, they learned to improvise, you know. So that's how you survive. People were real generous too. They would give me grain and so on to the point where I can't take the grain. I'm loaded down with it. St. Augustine did a great business there in the old restored section. Just well, maybe I'll see what it's like in the Midwest. And I got the Midwest, and so somebody said there's a reenactment up here, so I went to the reenactment. Then I circled around, came back, and we're on the But well, I'm in Texas. I might as well go all the way to California.
Is there anywhere you really enjoyed and stayed an extended period of time?
What's that?
Is there any place along your route that you really enjoyed and wound up staying for an extended period of time?
Well, every part of the country had its own sort of a flavor to it, you know.
If you
I
could,
like the South a lot because people were really friendly, almost too friendly. And then you had the West where people, more of the West, that people were very independent and not very friendly. It's a general rule. I'm not, you couldn't really predict it thoroughly. I'd see a place with, along the way with crossing the yard and born again or something, or you say, well, and then they go, we don't want you around there, get down the road. And then I'd see some place that was like wrecked cars and a refrigerator playing around. It's all done changed. And the guy goes, yo, come on in here, make camp. Yeah, we'll have hamburgers tonight. And stuff. So you can predict that, how people are going to be a lot of times and that. But as a general rule, though, the West was a little more independent type people who in the South they were very super friendly most of the time, unless they wanted to kill you, which is Alabama with her. But anyway,
Pacific Ocean never excited you then, huh? You got about that close to it.
yeah. Well, the problem with that is that to get from here to the Pacific Ocean would be a suicide run.
Yeah. Los Angeles.
Right. And then to get from here even over the mountain range right here.
Yeah.
To get to the ocean, the same thing. It was just not worth the potential danger, aggravation to say I touched the Pacific Ocean. So but I liked Oregon a lot, but the land prices there were just unbelievably crazy high.
Right.
And people they were telling me, you should check out New York State. That's where the land's cheap.
Yeah.
So that's cool up here.
So John, you found it was a museum or a library or something like that?
Yeah, in Jacksonville, Oregon. I was all the way across here and there. All I do, I was not doing wet plate. I was doing these dry plate aluminum types that Rockland Colorado Corporation was selling. They were calling them anodized, there was black anodized aluminum plate dry plate. But I wanted to do wet plate, but I couldn't figure it out. But I was using dry glass plates too. They had these dry plates that you could get special order from Kodak, and then you could get gelatin-based POP paper from Kodak too. But they labeled as studio proof paper, but it was the same as POP paper. You fix it, add a roll and all that. But it wasn't until I got up here in Jacksonville, Oregon, that I hit on the Peter Grip collection, which was there was a little museum, county museum there, and one of the locals said, you should check out the museum, or you'll be right up your alley. So I camped there's a town, and I walked over there and I thought, wow, this is it. You know, I say Peter Britt was the first photographer to come to the Oregon Territory, like in 1850 something.
Yeah.
And doing daguerreotypes, and then he was the first settler in Jackson, the town of Jacksonville, and was the first, and made that his home. Yeah. Anyway, they saved all his equipment. His descendants had saved all his papers, all his manuals, everything, and donated it to the museum there, and they had it all either on display or in file cabinets there. And they just said, "Yeah, there's a copy machine. There's the, help yourself." So I did my research, and I thought, "That's it. I can do it now. I got the information I need." But I didn't have the chemicals because I was on the road, and so I had taken off. All right. Well, thanks for coming.
Communications with family, friends along the way.
By
Was it
U.S. mail.
general delivery.
General delivery. Yeah, I pick out of town. Had I figure they hold your mail for 30 days, general delivery. So I figure I'm going to go to that little town probably, within 30 days. And I'd roll in and there'd be a stack of mail like this and stuff. And it was no junk mail. Not a piece of junk. Yeah. So it was like Christmas when I was in the post office. And yeah. But, like I said, there was some real high points and there were some low points. And I got hit by a car in Missouri. Right here. The aluminum thing. I was daydreaming and he hit the brakes and he blew the brake lines and he smashed right in the back end of me. And so it sent the rear axle jammed up underneath there, broke the shafts off. Didn't hurt Brownie, fortunately. It tore his harness, but it didn't hurt Brownie, fortunately. Wagon almost went over.
Oh my
Looks like that.
Did you call AAA?
What's that?
Call AAA. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but anyway, there was a farmer who had a shop just what's inside of all this, and he walked over and he said, "Anything I can do to help?" He said, "I got a shop up there. We'll take your stuff up there and we'll fix it all back together for you." And we'll pass it to
Along the way, huh?
and
You find that it's what you said. You definitely you traveled slower. So you did get to see way more. But do you find that on the road, humanity was a hell of a lot better than what you hear about? As far as like, you can't predict certain people, but there are an immense amount of good people out there.
yeah,
Who would just like, oh, you need a shirt, okay? They would just.
right.
That's something that I've am fascinated by. I mean, everywhere I went so far has been like, the people you didn't think would be the right people to, give you half their apple or something like that.
Yeah.
That's why I was wondering, could it be done today?
I
mean, Joe does it.
fortunately I have the bus, and then I have social media.
Yeah.
I would be able to pull this off because of the military and giving a shit for like living off that way, but I can't imagine on the roads today with especially distractions with the amount of people that would come by and they're looking at their phones. That would be the biggest issue.
Oh, as far as danger of being run into and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we already know that with just general
Distractions, yeah.
20 years ago, you didn't have the local terrorism, and now you turn the radio on or TV, and every day there's another happening onto it.
Well, fortunately, today.
What easier
It's
way to
terrifying,
bang
though.
the tintype man onto it?
No.
I think it's more or less. I found that like even now, I can't imagine even then that the only reason we know more about that stuff is because now we have it immediately told to us, whereas it's always happening,
Yeah.
Right.
That's always-
and I never see it. I mean,
It's concentrated in it's filtered and kind of curated with the bad, but we still have there's so much an overwhelming amount of good that's out there. Yeah.
Right.
things just kind of like the patience and virtue,
Yeah.
the things you want, just pop into your life.
Right.
So it was fascinating to hear even your story about your head brace last night, where the kids doing that.
Yeah, there's so many stories that you have. It's like constant, the good things that happen. I know it was a long time you were traveling,
Right.
but that I think is important to emphasize.
Oh, okay.
It's spell it.